Good evening, everybody.
So,
Hope everybody's doing all right. Ugh. I had a nearly 2-hour snowball fight with my kids, so I'm exhausted.
sounds like fun. It was good snowball snow.
Yeah. Painfully good.
Yes, I went out skiing and the snow was clumping to the bottom of my knees, and I ended up going back inside and putting glide wax on it, and it was perfect at that.
You could go good.
I should have put that on my shovel.
Yeah.
Trying to shovel, it was sticking to the shovel. It was horrible.
Yeah, I had to shovel 3 times to get it off the shovel.
Yeah.
It's just awful.
All right. Well, it is 7 o'clock. We have a quorum.
Why don't I have a picture?
I don't know. We can hear you. Alan, can you hear us? Oh, there.
Yeah, you are.
Okay, we have a quorum. A few people one, I think it's just at this point, Henry missing. But we do have a quorum and it's 7 o'clock, so we'll get started with this delayed meeting of the CPC, but here we are finally. So I'm going to call us to order, and this meeting is being recorded. All members are participating remotely. The first item on the agenda is to review and approve the minutes from our October 17th meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay. Seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote. Farrell.
Do you need my vote? I was not there. Elaine and I were both absent, but I'm looking to.
You can abstain if you want.
I'll abstain. Yeah.
The town clerk has done some research on this, and who are absent can still vote on the minutes.
Oh, okay.
If you would be more comfortable abstaining, that's fine.
Yeah.
Reed.
Aye.
Hanson.
Aye.
Wilson.
Aye.
Palayo.
Aye.
And Gallo, aye. Thank you all very much. Next item on the agenda. So because of the Zoom situation last time, it sort of puts us in this place where the original deadline for determinations of eligibility was December 5th, which is today. And yet here we are answering questions from prospective applicants. And so it seems appropriate to move our deadline for submission of determinations of eligibility at least a week or so in light of that fact. Any comments or discussion?
I'll agree.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we are still due to meet on the 19th. And that is the meeting where we're supposed to discuss and vote on determinations. I want to make sure we have enough time to review them. We have, following last year where we received no applications, this year we have I believe three determinations of eligibility already, plus another potential 2 that I've heard of. So it is a bumper crop year, and I want to make sure we all have time to read these. I mean, they're pretty short, I think. So any suggestions about what would be appropriate between now and the 19th?
In terms of the deadline?
A deadline, yeah, for determinations.
So why don't we do a week from tomorrow? So that would be tomorrow's 13th.
Yeah.
That's enough time. And then the meeting is the 19th. So it gives everybody almost a week. And they are really short.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good.
Friday the 13th.
Perfect. Okay. I will
Do you
entertain
want
a
a motion? I'll make a motion that we extend the deadline for determinations of eligibility to Friday, December 13th.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will vote. Farrell,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Hanson,
Hi,
Wilson,
Aye.
Leo,
Aye.
Geddes,
Aye.
and Gallo, aye. All right.
So Mateo, you will then forward those to us, the ones we don't already have, if they're new ones.
Yeah, as we receive, I mean, hopefully people will, the instructions are
Get them.
CPC
Okay.
email address, which should go to everybody, but if I see anything that isn't sent to that, then I will be sure to get to everybody on the committee.
Okay, great.
Okay. Item 3 on the agenda. Questions about eligibility and the process from potential applicants. So at this point, we're not actually discussing specific determinations of eligibility that we've received. That process of deliberation and voting on them will happen at our next meeting on the 19th. The purpose of this meeting, as we determined when we set our schedule, was basically to give an opportunity to members of the public to ask questions of the committee. We can't obviously make decisions right now or comment on eligibility, but we can provide feedback, I think. So I will, open the floor if anybody would like to, and members of the public would like to ask questions of the committee. You can go ahead and raise your hand. Susan.
I hope you can hear me. Okay. I'm here because I wanted to ask your opinion, and you may not be able to give it tonight, as to whether or not we should be. We're getting ready. The Cemetery Commission is getting ready to provide a certificate application for the second phase of the historic gravestone preservation that we submitted in 23. And I'm here to ask you whether you would like us to put it off, our application off until the next year, because we have not been able to proceed as rapidly as we wanted to on the 23 grant. And it has not, it's been because of a number of reasons. One is that somehow our application or the final paperwork, although was okayed by the committee and okayed by the Cemetery Commission, it didn't make it to the select board until rather late. And the professional who's doing the work for us was not able to start in the fall of 23 as we had hoped, but not until the spring of 24. And there are two reasons for that. And one is to do with weather, because you have to have decent temperatures to work on to do some of the work she does on gravestones. And the other one is she's a woman from Wendell. Her company is the Historic Gravestones Restoration. She's a real professional and she's very popular, and she's been involved in a very large job in the Chicago area and hasn't had the time to give to us that we would hope. So we are not going to be finished until the end of the spring of until sometime in the spring of 25, because she can't work this fall given the temperatures. So my question to you is, would you just as soon we put it off, but making the application, giving you another application to look at for another year? And I don't know whether you want to consider that this year or not. Tonight, maybe you can't.
Rita, yeah.
So if she was going to be working in the spring of 2025, we wouldn't be voting on this, any additional money till annual town meeting, and it doesn't become available until after the money isn't available till after town meeting. So conceivably, if you finished in the spring of 2025, you could, if you applied, have money to work in the fall of 2025. So something to think about. Otherwise, you're waiting a whole other year.
You could also be working in the spring of 2026.
Right.
Because if you don't put in an application, the soonest you'd be able to be working on it would be fall of 2026.
Right.
And these grants, so the CPA grants are active for 3 years. There's, as far as I know, there's no prohibition on holding multiple grants at the same time.
Yeah, no prohibition.
But I think that the question of timing that Rita and Elaine point out, I don't know, it would seem to suggest that there's no reason to wait.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I'm hearing that you have a lot of grants in front of you, and I'm wondering whether you want our application also.
I mean,
Ready to go.
yeah, I mean, so I think ideally the way that we would make determinations about grants is about the qualifications of the individual project. It's not a competitive thing where we say like, because we're awarding X amount to this project, we can't award to another. There are constraints in terms of how much funding is available in each pot. So for example, this would be coming out of the Historic Preservation Fund, which currently has $11,700 in it. Now there is another sort of chunk of money in the undesignated account, which after this special town meeting is now going to be 362,000. But something else the committee will probably bear in mind is we don't want to start sort of fiendishly drawing down on that amount of money, because that's money that we want to have on hand for other projects in the future. But I don't know that there's nothing in our preservation plan that says that we should be evaluating projects on a competitive basis against other projects. It's against the criteria that are in the plan, basically.
Right.
And there's no way to know what might come down the pipeline next year. If you were to wait next year, you might still end up against, or alongside, I should say, multiple other projects.
Well, I heard what you said the other night about the historic preservation sum being around $11,000, and we would probably be asking for 10,000, which is what we asked for the last time, and we're not sure whether her charges are going up. So we would take, if you gave it to us, a good chunk of that 11,000 plus. But we're happy to go ahead and apply, and I hear that as your advice.
Well, I mean, I guess, and I would really be interested in knowing what other folks in the committee think, but I think that concerns about how much money is available are something the committee should worry about and town meeting should worry about, and it's not something that should prevent somebody from applying necessarily.
Absolutely. Yep.
I would encourage you to apply.
Yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right. Elizabeth? Oh,
You're
you're muted.
muted, Elizabeth.
Sorry, I was late. Is this now I'm okay? Yeah.
Yep.
Is this an appropriate time to ask questions?
Yes.
Yes, we are taking questions from potential applicants.
Okay. Has the CPC worked with the state on a particular property in the past? Or in a joint venture together?
No, we haven't. Our committee has not.
Okay, all right. I know I've mentioned this to a couple of you, but once I finish with Village Neighbors Board in May of 2025, I would like to begin to work on a project that would be multiple efforts, some state and some local, on the Bennett House and the property of the Carroll Homes. And my thought is to see what resources the CPC has, and then work on several other organization or entities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, because my idea is to renovate the house. People who are aging out of Department of Children and Families, who have a diagnosed disability and do not have the capacity to live alone, would be able to live in that house and get the FRTA to transport them because they have jobs that are available. And that would mean probably a caretaker and the possibility of 8 people living in that house. And then transforming all of that lawn, which I feel like is a huge waste of time for the state, into a British style community garden, which would allow people who come from food deserts as well as local residents to walk into the garden and be exposed to healthy fruits and vegetables. It's quite an extensive piece of property. Anyway, it would involve several entities from the Commonwealth as well as town resources. So any information or reaction or anything else, I would be happy to hear.
I mean, first of all, I would be thrilled to see that property being used for something other than just storing equipment for DCR and slowly rotting away.
Yeah, exactly. And no one has ever picked up on it. So
I mean, I think there are a couple of things. Right, the DCR's custodianship program requires some kind of public access at some point. It sounds like maybe the community garden aspect of your project would fit that. Obviously, that has no bearing on what the CPC does. I do think, I've looked into this property a little bit, and because the interior has basically been stripped of the historical furnishings, then it would not really qualify for historical preservation funding because it wouldn't meet the standards of the Secretary of the Interior that have to be met for CPA funding for historic preservation. So I think that your route would end up being the community housing portion of funding. But that's my sort of gut sense of things based off what I know about the property and the way CPA funding gets used. Committee may end up coming to a different determination depending on what the actual application ends up looking like.
okay.
But and I will also say that given the history of CPA projects in Shutesbury, we spend a lot on open space, recreation, and historic resources, and we have rarely spent on community housing. And so as far as where resources in our CPA funds exist, that portion of our budget is a little bit less tapped year to year.
Thank you for that info. Great.
But then there are questions, and maybe Rita would be able to better answer these, about whether or not the project you're describing qualifies as community housing under the statute, which I'm not.
Yeah. It would, as long as there was an affordability. It's the affordability and the deed restrictions. I think, Elizabeth, one thing I would suggest, and I'm not sure who might come up with this, but if somebody could do some sort of a feasibility analysis, because when DCR put that property out, I think in a request for proposals or whatever, request for qualifications, they didn't get any responses. And there's a reason they didn't get any responses, is that is a really, really difficult and very expensive undertaking. Now, granted, when you're talking about any kind of assisted housing, there are resources out there. And I think if this was targeting a specific population, say Department of Developmental Services, or whoever it was, is that to start having those conversations sooner rather than later.
Oh yeah.
And even to see if they have resources, because CPA, if there was an affordability component to it, yes, could put into, you know, in the, would fall within the community housing definition.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, the feasibility analysis is really the trickiest part. And for us on a feasibility analysis, we wouldn't want to do it without some sort of site control and knowing that, you know, there was control of the site. And typically it's controlled by the municipality. So
Good to know. Thank you.
anyway, we can talk about this some more offline outside of the meeting.
Yeah. There was something, Matteo, that you mentioned, and I have a question about it, and then I'll move on. That was the deed restrictions. Where are those?
So I mentioned deed restrictions. So that would be if money was being put in, you know, we were using CPA money, we would want to make sure that there were restrictions in case the property was ever transferred, sold or transferred. The money either gets repaid or the affordability stays with the property.
I see. I know what my question, thank you, Rita. My question, Matteo, was the Commonwealth has been maintaining the exterior of that building, the Bennett building. Is that something that could be negotiated with the town so that the CPC would then be in charge of that part or not?
Well, there's, I'm not sure I entirely understand the question. So the CPC wouldn't be in charge of the property. Where the exclusive jurisdiction we have is to recommend the town meeting whether or not to award funding for something. So the project would be managed by somebody else and the property would be managed by somebody else. My understanding, and somebody else can correct me on this if I'm wrong, my understanding of the DCR's custodianship program is that the state still retains ownership of the property, right? It's essentially like a $0 lease in exchange for saving this building from falling down. But we as a committee wouldn't be sort of taking on any responsibility for it if we recommended a town meeting that that CPA funds should be used for it. As far as historic preservation goes, I don't know the extent of the changes that were made to the facade and whether or not that would sort of obviate using CPA money for historic preservation purposes in the same way that the interior has been essentially stripped of its historic resources. I don't know what the state has done to it in comparison to the past. I think it kind of along the lines with what Rita was suggesting about a feasibility study, there would probably have to be some kind of expert analysis about the history of that.
Okay. So last question, what would be the first step in looking for someone to do a feasibility analysis?
Again, we should just talk about that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Okay.
Okay. Are there other questions from potential applicants? Mary Jo?
Hi, it's Mary Jo. I've been working with Pam and others on the Subduing Knotweed Coalition. And so one of the things that we tossed around as an idea was for the town, not our coalition, but the town to come to the committee with a proposal to get a plan, a townwide plan for managing knotweed. So that would involve having an expert come through the town and work to develop a plan so that there would be a overarching plan for the town to then decide to move forward with that plan, so that it would not be a sort of a here and there and whatever, that it would be a professionally developed plan. We, as the Subduing Knotweed Committee, are very happy to help with writing things, doing research, doing whatever, but that would still be from the town. And so we were wondering if submitting a application for determination would make sense under those reasons. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if that's clear or not, but that's kind of where I'm at.
I mean, again, I can't say, and I don't think the committee can say whether or not it would be found eligible. I do know that there is a pretty extensive history across the state of communities using CPA open space funding to support invasive management plan development. And, you know, based off of that record, it seems like it's a pretty common use of CPA funding. I don't know if other folks on the committee have any experience with this or thoughts about it.
Yeah, one of the things that I would say is, Mary Jo, you said that your committee, the Dewey Knotweed Coalition, would not want to be responsible for applying, but someone has to be. And so there has to be a committee that that would be working on this. And do you know of someone in the town who is interested in doing that?
So Pam, maybe Pam is certainly interested in doing that as the person who's overseeing Shutesbury's plan. But the issue is it's going to be a town plan. So I think it has someone in the town, and I'm not sure who, or if there's needs to be a committee or what, or it could be coming from the open space committee with our help. I'm not sure how to proceed, but one of the things we did realize as we were working with the Concom and other groups in the town on some very tiny digging projects that we were looking at was that you know, we can't go and ask for permits, and we can't do this as an outside entity. We need to have the town doing it with our support, whatever that, and I don't know exactly how that develops or what that means, but that's what makes sense to us. Rita, maybe you might be able to.
Yeah, I think what I think as Elaine was suggesting, either having the open space committee, it doesn't really make sense for the select board. And I wouldn't want to commit us to doing any more than we're already doing anyway.
Right.
But open space seems to me, or Board of Health or Conservation Commission for that matter, you know, could come and
even the planning, excuse me, but even the planning board.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, they could be the sponsors of you know,
Okay.
the application.
Okay.
What
And so go ahead.
Yeah, what is the Farm and Forestry Committee?
Long gone. Hasn't been around for a while. Yeah. I mean, open space seems to me to be and I'm not even sure we have an active open space committee.
We do.
We do? Okay, good.
Mhm. I know 3 people who are on it.
Oh, all right.
Matteo, are you on that?
I am not. It's Penny and Penny Jakes, Barbara Bigelow, Gail Fleischiker.
Yep.
Okay, yeah,
Okay, great.
they did the astronomy. So I don't know if this week, I mean, they may need to like vote on it or something to do that, and we may be quite behind the timeline to put in a determination by the 13th.
No, but for next year, we could do that.
Yeah, but that would
Or-
pull us back a whole 26, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure how the other members of the committee feel, but if you were explaining what the concept was, but we didn't know who the sponsor was, I think we could say, yes, it is or isn't eligible,
Okay, and we don't, at that point, we don't need to have,
the application.
Yeah, so
and we don't need to ask for, say how much money it's gonna cost.
Should have a ballpark figure.
yeah, the
Wait.
determination of eligibility is an estimate. It's
Okay,
a sort of description of the project so we can decide if it fits within the law. I mean, something that we have discussed as a committee is also someone need not submit a determination of eligibility to then later submit a full application. The purpose of the determination of eligibility phase is to spare people the labor of writing a 5-page application only to be told later, this actually doesn't technically qualify under the statute. So this is a advanced check stage.
okay. So we could write something up on this determination where we would propose that a committee in Shutesbury, possibly the Open Space Committee, would be the sponsor of the application.
That's less important than what is the nature of the work.
Right, okay, so we could still do it even if we don't have all those ducks in order. Just saying that we are looking for possibly doing this, and
Is it
okay,
eligible?
but that I have to say, and I bet you Pam will agree, that actually makes everything feels so much clearer understanding that we were missing that sort of piece, that who was going to really sponsor this and how was that going to happen. We weren't really sure how that was going to happen, and this makes it so much more clear, not only for this CC, for this application, but for moving forward with this project. So thank you so much. Pam, do you have any other questions or thoughts?
I'm still confused about, I think for me, the whole confusion comes into the process of all of these different things. I am not so familiar with town processes. And so we do this, we write up something, and then we're proposing, say, I'll just briefly, so we're proposing that we get grant money to develop a town-wide invasive plant management or management plan. And then from there, what happens? How do you get the town to adopt it? Because we can spend the money, write it up, but the town has to adopt it, don't they? So I need help with understanding that.
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, that would be some research you would want to do. And I assume if the town's adopting it, then it might be a town meeting, but I don't know what exactly the plan's going to say, what it's going to be looking for. And
Right, of course.
who has jurisdiction? Is it the select board, or would the select board say, even if they had jurisdiction, we'd rather have town meeting endorse this? So,
Okay.
I
It's
think
also going to depend on if we're talking about going to townwide property or roadside property or individual owner property and things like that. So
Right.
I would say town meeting is where you're headed with this.
Okay. That's good to know.
Okay, yeah, I mean, this is probably a thing for further discussion later, but you wouldn't want to spend $10,000 on a plan and then not have it adopted. So somehow we'd have to figure out how to do that.
Well, I think if there has to be a town meeting vote for any CPA monies.
Right.
So you're gonna get an initial indication at,
Right, right.
you know, when the article was put before town meeting. Now, town meetings aren't the same every year, different people come, but it would give you some sense if people say, no, we shouldn't have any plan, we shouldn't do anything, then
Okay,
we're not
so
gonna give you
that's helpful.
$10,000. So,
That's helpful, Rita, because I didn't even understand that part. You know what I mean? The whole thing to me is like a quagmire. It's like we keep.
that's town government quagmire.
We keep trying to do these pieces, but we're trying to get them to come all together and yeah, okay. We'll just keep plucking along. That's,
Okay.
sounds like a good place to start.
And the determination is on the website, the
Yes.
form? Okay, great. All
Thank you
right,
so much.
thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
No, I'd like to suggest that in the long term, if anything is actually done formally in town, that there be an educational component
Mm.
to this, that lets people know what knotweed looks like, where you can find it, and what you should do when you find it,
Right, very
besides
good.
pulling it,
Yep,
just to make sure that people know.
Absolutely.
yes,
Absolutely, and that's what we've been actually doing already, but want to continue with, yes.
But it has to be widely spread over town.
Yeah,
yes.
and that's hard because if you know, you can have a Zoom presentation, but how
Yeah,
many
I know
people
it is.
come, and then you can, there's so many different things you can do, but it's still hard to get it through. Yeah. But I think that's a great idea.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there other questions from members of the public? Steve?
Yeah, I just wanted to find out if there are any questions for to the pickleball people here. Hal and I represent the pickleball players, and our the DOE has been sponsored by the Recreation Committee, so we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have of us. If not, I think it's pretty clear what is in what we've requested. So I'm not sure we have any additional questions for the commission or the committee tonight.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
So this is going to relate to your proposal, but not saying eligible or not eligible. You know, I think a couple of things I think are missing. One is site identification and site analysis and a feasibility analysis. So feasibility analysis would include all of those things at looking at sites. And I'm wondering if it wouldn't make sense to separate the application into two parts, one being the feasibility analysis / site identification, and then the second is the actual construction. Because I think without, there aren't a whole lot of town-owned sites. And I don't think you're contemplating going and acquiring a piece of land. Is that?
That's correct. We were just, I mean.
You wanted to use town-owned sites. So, you count them on one hand.
Yeah.
Or maybe two fingers, 3 fingers. So right, off the bat, having somebody look at and there's been a lot of research on all of those sites, town hall, fire station, Lotto 32. So it wouldn't take a whole lot to say, would any of those be appropriate? And then what are the development costs associated with putting a pickleball court there? Because it's not simply like setting down this court, it's all site preparation and getting permits and all that kind of stuff. So, I'm pretty sure Matteo, did you do some checking about whether or not site feasibility or feasibility analysis would be eligible?
Yeah, and it would be, doing that kind of a study is something that would typically be eligible and is often, as Rita is suggesting, a first phase for a significant, this is a significant project. um, it's certainly, I think, yeah.
We've discussed that amongst ourselves, the players, and thought that we could combine them both. Since there's very few options on the site, couldn't it potentially be put in the same project, feasibility and construction? And if we look at other projects that have been done by the CPA funds, many of them are not done with a feasibility study, although some have been. Example of one that's been, it was Northampton. I think they got $13,000 to do a feasibility study. Otherwise, if you look at all the other examples of other CPA funds being used for pickleball courts, they're done without feasibility studies.
They typically have staff. Those are communities that have a lot more
staff.
Staff infrastructure than we have. So you wouldn't have that here. You wouldn't have anybody who could sit down with you and go through all the site issues and maybe do some design work where Northampton or even Amherst, they have staff, they have people. We don't have that. So that, when I talk about the site, it's like somebody just helping think through what those issues are.
It was suggested to me, I spoke to someone in South Hadley, and that person said for the project of our scope, that a construction company could do the analysis and bid on the project, what they think they need to do, as opposed to having a separate feasibility phase. Could we have a feasibility application and a construction application the same year?
I mean, you could, but I guess there are a couple of things to think about. To go back to Rita's point about eligibility, this project, again, I can't say that it's eligible or not, but what is described in the determination of eligibility falls within the parameters of what the CPA typically allows. There's a secondary question here of what happens after when you get to the application stage. As Rita said, not having a site identified will be a huge problem. But I do want to go back to my previous point about the size of this. 98,000 is, I mean, the town just agreed to 136,000 for the Amherst Regional High School track and field. That's a multi-use facility for a lot of people. I think my inclination would be it would be better to separate the feasibility from the construction, because the politics of going before town meeting and asking for such a large sum of money for a project that you can't guarantee is feasible means even if it gets past the determination of eligibility phase, even if it gets past the application phase to the committee, it's going to face a pretty significant hurdle at town meeting as well. And if there are things that can be done to address that, that's to your benefit, right? So like splitting it into a smaller portion first for feasibility, site identification, and then coming back and saying, well, we've done that work, and in the next year applying for whatever the budget is for construction, like Rita suggested, would probably make the project more likely to go forward. I don't know if there are ways to also, again, sort of think about a facility like this in a multi-use way. Can it be used for tennis as well? Can it be used for basketball? Like, are there other populations in the community that can be served besides just pickleball players? Then there are, I mean, but there are obviously great advantages to this. Like adding facilities like this to our community can help attract new residents, right? Because we are not a community that has a lot of great active recreation facilities like this. But my concern, and this has, again, nothing to do with eligibility, this has to do with advisability, is that asking for such a large sum without having done the feasibility in advance to show that it can be done might be a significant hurdle.
Okay.
Okay.
Advice well taken.
Yeah.
I'd also suggest that If you're doing a feasibility study the first year, then you have a whole year of looking for funding to complement the CPA money. So you could be looking for grant funding, you could be looking for donations, you could be looking for member fees, things like that, that would reduce the amount of money that you're asking the town to put forward from our CPA grant. And that might make it much more attractive also.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, these are all things that are, if you look at the community preservation plan, and it's clear from your determination of eligibility that you did, but these are things that are essential at the application stage, right? Like leveraging that matching funding that Elaine's talking about, identifying a site, a specific site that Rita talked about, serving as large a population as possible. So those are things, I guess, to bear in mind.
Just one point, going back and looking at the document that was provided that had CPA funding for different communities. There are 2 feasibility studies that are listed there, and I would assume that that is the first stage for looking at a project, and from that, then presumably, if they are deemed that these are feasible and appropriate, that then there would be a follow-up larger application request for a project to actually build or modify areas for pickleball courts.
okay. Sounds like that's the way to go.
Yeah. Okay.
Appreciate the advice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions for the committee? All right. Is there any other business from members of the committee?
I'd just like to say thanks, Matteo, for presenting on Tuesday night the background information on the track project. It was clear and well stated and put forward, and set Dave up nicely for coming in and answering some specific questions. So thank you for doing it in articulate and concise and clear manner.
Thanks. I feel like I was speaking extremely fast because I was trying to get us in and out as quickly as possible. Glad I brought the numbers because
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. Just to add to what Cliff said, I second everything he said. And the fact that you had the numbers was great, because I thought, oh my God, don't ask me, because I'm not going to remember any of that. So that was really good.
well, okay, so we have 3, it seems like we have 3 determinations of eligibility. Possibly, sounds like one of them might be amended. We might be getting another one about the invasive plants thing. I know the Historical Commission is also going to be talking at our next meeting about submitting a second for the guide board project, because there's actually 2 different pieces to finishing that project now. And both of them would require funding going in different directions. So we may be getting one from the commission as well. I don't know. I feel like I'm looking at Henry like I don't want to step on anything.
You don't want to have a quorum.
Well stated. Well stated.
But yeah, seems like it'll be an active year for us, which is
Yeah, no, it's great.
That's great.
And just,
That's
I
great.
think having projects will then generate more. So, no, it's good to have people coming forward.
Yeah. And just on the subject of the guide board, since the CPC helped to pay for it, it's looking great. Williamstown has sent me some photos, and they have got they removed the modern layers of paint down to the original, and then they've started applying the sort of restoration paint and doing the lettering again. So it's in very good shape, and should be good to come back early next year. The applications really are geared towards that, the question of what we're going to do with the top piece of it, and building a proper concrete foundation for it, as opposed to Cliff, you were there, right, when we moved it?
Yes.
It was sitting on dirt and bricks.
Yeah.
Not good.
It's amazing, it was still standing.
I tell you, is there any way of somehow publicizing pictures of the restoration in process to the rest of the town, so the town knows what's going on? Because I don't think, a lot of people don't pay attention to what we're doing.
I mean, Henry, I don't know how you feel about it. We can talk about this at the historical commission meeting, maybe putting out a town announce or something with a, you know, check-in update about our beloved guide board.
Or even on the Wet Town webpage, you know, with some
Yeah.
pictures or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
people
looks it's all-
enjoy seeing it.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm willing to help, but I'm not sure that, I'm not sure what we should do, what we should post.
I'll bring that up with the historical commission website, or historical commission meeting.
Okay. Thanks.
It's a good idea. Thank you. All right. Is there any other business from the committee? Okay.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
And
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none. Carol,
Aye.
Reed,
I
Hanson,
All right.
Wilson,
Aye.
Aye.
Eddies,
Aye.
and Gallo, aye. That's it. Have a
Good
night,
night,
everybody.
everybody.
All right.
Enjoy.
Good night.
it's
Good
good.
night.